Well, hello, 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 hello. Hey, this is Warren Redlick. Thank you so much for watching. Hello, hello, hello. Thank you so much. This is Warren Redlick. Thank you for watching. I want to talk today about this Supreme Court decision that just happened. Um, Loper Bright Enterprises is a court case where this is making a lot of news today. A lot of people are freaking out. The radical left and the moderate left and anybody in the Democratic Party is freaking out because how dare the Supreme Court assert its authority to counteract what the federal government does. Of course, if the Supreme Court wanted to stop the federal government from banning abortions, they'd be fine with that. This is, both parties do this. They don't like a court decision when it goes against them, and they pretend there's some principle behind it. But this is relevant to Tesla and FSD in a way that I don't think anybody has seen yet, and I'm not sure, but I think this may have a significant role in limiting the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration from harassing Tesla the way it has been doing over the development of FSD. I think this is a really big deal potentially to free up Tesla's ability to innovate in FSD, to not have to adopt a bunch of BS recalls and twist the software to try to make it fit into some BS interpretation that the NHTSA adopts. So anyway, Loper Bright Enterprises versus Raimondo. Raimondo is the Secretary of Commerce. So I asked ChatGPT, I fed ChatGPT the majority opinion or the decision, and I said, hey, how does this affect NHTSA's ability to regulate FSD? So it said without the Chevron deference. So what happened is, sorry, just a step back. Before this decision, the rule was that if there was a law that sort of gave the federal government authority to regulate something but wasn't clear, the courts would let the federal agency decide what it's allowed to regulate. It would defer. It was called judicial deference. So the court would defer, deferring to agency interpretations. If the agency said, yeah, the law allows us to do this, then the Supreme Court would say, okay, you can do that. And the courts in general. And the Supreme Court just said, no, 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 no. You can make your fact decisions and we'll defer to you on facts, but we don't defer to you on the interpretation of the law. And that's a big difference. So without the Chevron deference, the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration's interpretations of safety defects will now be subject to stricter judicial review. Courts will independently interpret the statutory language, leading to different outcomes compared to when Chevron deference was applied. Now, that's a half-assed short analysis of how this applies, and I wanted to do something a little more in-depth. So this is the language that the court closed with towards the end of the opinion. Chevron is overruled. Courts must exercise their independent judgment in deciding whether an agency has acted within its statutory authority. The way it works is the Congress passes a law that says, hey, you agency, you regulate that, right? And this is going to really come up with the EPA, by the way, because the EPA has asserted its authority to regulate anything related to climate change when that's not in the laws that created the EPA. So that's an example of where it might come up. That's probably where people are more upset about it, is if now the courts are going to say, hey, wait a minute, this isn't what you're supposed to be doing, right? You're not supposed to be regulating climate change. You're supposed to be regulating clean air, and carbon dioxide is not unclean, right? I think that's probably where this is heading and where a lot of the attention is going to go. But careful attention to the judgment of the executive branch may help inform that query, and when a particular statute delegates authority to an agency consistent with constitutional limits, courts must respect the delegation. But courts need not, and under the Administrative Procedure Act, may not defer to an agency interpretation of the law simply because a statute is ambiguous. So the question is, what this raises for me, and just one more thing. Under Chevron, a statutory ambiguity is where the statute says something that's not clear, and then the agency says, oh, this gives us the power to cover that. So the Clean Air Act says you can regulate clean air, and then the agency can decide, okay, carbon dioxide is not clean, when they very clearly were not talking about carbon dioxide when they passed the Clean Air Act, right? So all of a sudden you're just adopting some sort of power. So a statutory ambiguity becomes a license authorizing an agency. This is what the court saw as the problem with the Chevron doctrine. that the agency could change its positions as much as it likes, with unexplained inconsistency being at most a reason for holding an interpretation to be arbitrary and capricious. But Chevron fosters unwarranted instability in the law, leaving those attempting to plan around agency action to an internal fog of uncertainty. The agency can just change its mind about what their authority is. And somebody who's trying to create a product or a service like FSD isn't sure when the agency is going to regulate them or not and what authority they have to do so. And they tend to just sort of go along. So this is the statute that creates the authority for the Department of Transportation, which I believe has been assigned to the NHTSA, to prescribe motor vehicle safety standards. Each standard shall be practicable, doable, something you can do practically, meet the need for motor vehicle safety, and be stated in objective terms. Now, here's a critical detail. There's no standard for self-driving. The agency has not adopted any standard for self-driving. Here's a list of some of the standards they have adopted. There aren't that many, right? But they've adopted standards for windshield defrosting and defogging, or brake hoses, or tires, or rear visibility, or hood latch system. Okay, but there's no standard. And I looked, and I asked ChatGPT and other AIs, hey, is there a standard? And somebody said there was a standard, and it took me a while to figure out, no, there's no standard. So the NHTSA, April of 2020, was working on potentially coming up with standards. But that was 4 years ago, more than 4 years ago, and they still haven't adopted standards. So what are the standards for self-driving cars? If you're not going to adopt standards for self-driving cars, are you really doing what you're supposed to be doing? Because let's go back here. What are they supposed to be doing? The Secretary of Transportation shall prescribe motor vehicle safety standards. And then, the manufacturers have to comply with the safety standards. So what's the, and I'm sure NTSB is going to be relevant to this too, 14.4. I just haven't addressed that yet. NHTSA is the one that keeps making Tesla do recalls and keeps demanding more information from Tesla. Like, you want information for what? You don't have a standard. This is the problem. You end up with this standardless regulation where the NHTSA says, we don't think what you're doing is safe. It's like, well, you haven't adopted a safety standard, so how are we supposed to comply with a safety standard if you don't adopt one? Right? So I'm going to cover where that goes. What the NHTSA does do is it says the Secretary may make a final decision that a motor vehicle or replacement equipment contains a defect related to motor vehicle safety or does not comply with an applicable motor vehicle safety standard. So this is the problem where it's ambiguous. Like, well, what's a defect related to motor vehicle safety? How are they deciding whether something, because remember there was a recall because the NHTSA decided that the size of the icons on the screen of the car were not like the right size, and they increased the size of the icons by like 2 pixels. Like, was that really an appropriate attempt to protect vehicle safety? That's so overstepping your bounds. It's not a defect related to motor vehicle safety. That's just some asshole bureaucrat just decided I don't like something. Right? Did I look at the work the NIST is doing? I haven't looked at NIST. So I just think this is an important issue here that, and this, by the way, is just there's a standing order, but there's no standards, right? The NHTSA issued a standing general order requiring identified manufacturers and operators to report to the agency certain crashes involving vehicles. Well, where's the standard? When are you, because this is the problem, is the purpose of the law creating this was give us standards so that we know what we need to do to comply with the standards. We know what we need to do to fit within the law. If you tell us what the standards are, then we can make our vehicles fit with the law. If you tell us you need seatbelt pretensioners, then we'll put seatbelt pretensioners in every car. If you say we need airbags, we'll put airbags in every car. But if you say, well, you need to make you need to make self-driving safe, well, what's the standard? What do you want us to do? Are you going to require LiDAR? And why would you require LiDAR? And if they did pass a rule requiring LiDAR, okay, we would now know this is what we need to address. We can challenge whether requiring LiDAR is an appropriate standard. But if you don't even create a standard for Tesla to comply with. This is just messy. And so I think a possible path that this goes is the next time the NHTSA tells Tesla, hey, there's this thing we don't like about FSD, Tesla says, well, what standard do you want us to comply with? Are you alleging that there's a safety defect? What are we unsafe relative to? And this is a big thing. Like, we pretty much know that FSD is safer than other cars. That a car driving on FSD, a car driving on autopilot, is safer than other cars. So why are you regulating the safer cars? Why are you putting all this energy into managing the safety of the cars that are safer than the other cars? Shouldn't you be focused on the cars that are actually unsafe, are less safe? And I think there's potential here for Tesla to challenge NHTSA action and just say, hey, look, we looked at the new court case. We don't think you have the authority to tell us what to do. It would depend. Like, if there's a crash and you want to investigate a crash, okay, I think that they're within their authority to investigate a crash. But if you're just going to say, we think your car needs to stop at stop signs, which is one of the problems with, one of the regulations they imposed on FSDs, like, well, was that a safety defect? Because human driver, they designed the car to learn from human drivers, and it wasn't stopping at stop signs when human drivers don't stop at stop signs. So why would that be a safety defect? If human drivers drive that way, how is this a safety defect? I am more worried about requiring cars to determine if the driver is impaired. Well, the driver impairment is going to be irrelevant once we have self-driving cars, so I'm not too worried about that. So yeah, elonbits.com for t-shirts. Discriminate cogitandi means critical thinking, because the point of FSD is to be safer than humans, right? So, oh yeah, please support me on Patreon. Please support me as a YouTube channel member here. Please support me on X as a subscriber. Join the Daily Lie. I'm really focusing a lot more on X, so I'm at WR4NYGov. So please follow me on X. That's where I'm most active. And by the way, update, Elon now follows me on X. And Elon has been replying to me more on X. So that's fun. And I am probably making more money on X than I'm definitely making more money on X than I'm making on YouTube. I'm going to continue on YouTube. Live streaming is better here than it is on X. So far, I expect X to update at some point and be better. But I just wanted to cover this point. I think this is an important issue that we don't talk about. A lot of us get frustrated. Biden appointed Missy Cummings from Duke University, who hates Elon and wanted to punch Elon out, and pointed her to the NHTSA and it was part of the lawfare, part of the Biden administrative attacks on Tesla. And this may affect SpaceX. It may affect environmental issues surrounding Boca Chica, Texas. It may affect Neuralink. The government agencies are asserting authority to regulate things that they don't have, that Congress hasn't said they have the authority to regulate. Then we may see a lot of companies now saying, hey, wait a minute, you don't have the authority to regulate us in this area. Please back it up. And then you end up in court. So where is Congress exercising oversight on this regulatory body, or is it just another collection of jobs with which to reward campaign staff? So this is the point, Colin, that the Congress gave the agency the authority to issue standards. So they do have the authority to issue standards. And let me pull that up. Shall prescribe motor vehicle safety standards. Each standard shall be practicable, meet the need for motor vehicle safety, and be stated in objective terms. They have to publish the proposed standard, give people a chance to comment, back and forth. And then if they publish a standard and somebody says, hey, that standard is not valid, it could be challenged. But if they don't adopt a standard at all, then they're not really following the rule. This is, yes, Congress could step forward and say, okay, we're gonna implement standards, or we're gonna say specifically that the NHTSA has authority to regulate self-driving cars, and we're going to specify this is how they can regulate self-driving cars. But there is no standard. So Mark Cloud, good morning. What standard? There are no standards. They have never adopted standards for self-driving cars. They've just adopted the authority to regulate it as if it's a safety defect. And well, wait a minute, how is the icon size of, something in the user interface a safety defect? And really, if we know that FSD, driven by humans, supervised by humans, is safer than human, then where's the safety defect? If this is safer than human-driven cars, then there's no safety defect. This is safer than human. And so I think there could be an argument to shut down if there's a legit safety defect, right? If there's a legit problem where the unintended acceleration or, it starts like chasing children down and, giving them wedgies, like, okay, there's a safety defect there. Um, so I just think this is going to be a challenge. And this is an opportunity for tech companies in particular, but not just tech companies, to say, hey, wait a minute. You don't have the authority to regulate us in the way that you're trying to regulate us. There's no statute that authorizes this. We're done here. Y'all move on. And then there could be some conflict. And it's like, hey, we appreciate you're trying to regulate us. We think you should adopt standards. When you adopt standards, let us know. But this idea, I think this really goes to the problem is that instead of the NHTSA doing its job, which it started 4 years ago, and really you could argue it's been going on for a long time, when are you going to adopt standards for self-driving cars? Why haven't you adopted standards for self-driving cars? What are you guys doing in your job? Like, where's the work? And the problem is, of course, it's really hard to adopt standards for self-driving cars because there aren't any yet. When the money starts flooding in at Starlink, we will see how far a no standards regulatory body can push its authority to shake down. So this is exactly it, Colin. It's another good example. The FCC's ability to regulate Starlink. Now, I think FCC does have detailed standards. So I think that may be less of a challenge, and I think they do have detailed authority. That's an open question. I think more like when Fish and Wildlife says, hey, there were some eggs that we found at Starbase that were damaged, and therefore we need to do a whole environmental review. I think some of those environmental reviews may get pushed back, and things may happen a little quicker. And FAA authority to regulate rocket launches, like, is that statutory authority, or they did just adopt that? There may be some pushback on FAA regulation of. I think, Elon has generally said, hey, the FAA is fine. They're not over-regulating us, but we'll see. I do think it could come up with SpaceX as well. It could come up with Neuralink. Does the FDA really have the authority to regulate Neuralink? What's the level, what's the extent of their authority to regulate Neuralink? Boring company tunnels. Now, by the way, this does not apply to state regulation. This is specific to federal agencies. So if California overregulates building projects, this decision does not make it easier to build projects in California. It does make it easier when there's a federal regulation interfering with something. It may be possible to challenge the federal regulation interfering with whatever it is that somebody wants to do. So, yeah, I guess this video isn't going to be that long. I just wanted to cover a few points. I think I've made the points. I don't think there's a lot more to talk about. We could talk about Tesla stock is up. I'm pleased that Tesla stock is up in the short term. I don't even know what it's. Well, actually, the market's probably open right now, right? So, the stock is down. It's up. It's down. Whatever. It was up over 200, and now it's back down. The stock is up a little bit from where it was around the 180s. I don't think that's really that big of a deal. I think you're going to see fluctuations back and forth, up and down. I happen to buy back in around the 180s, so obviously I'm up on where I bought back in my the 20% I sold, I bought back basically 19%. So it was a little less than 20 and a little less than 19, but nice to see 200 again. Yeah, we're like 197 or something like that. But I just, like, for me personally, like, I'm not really worried about where the stock price is today or tomorrow. And if it's at 180 or 220, like, doesn't really matter a whole lot to me. Really, what it's like, when are we going to see something develop that persuades a lot of investors that this is real and that the future is bright? And I think that's probably not August 8th. I don't think August 8th is going to trip the wire. I think probably we have to see a self-driving car actually, a robo-taxi network operating. Maybe just unsupervised FSD, right? You no longer have to, because we think we're really close to no nag. No, you don't have to hold the wheel anymore. I think that's sort of an operation. Thoughts on X phone? I think Elon was thinking about a phone, and I think I don't know, he still might do it. I think that's still open. Am I going to do another Rivian analysis again? Let's talk about Rivian. So Rivian announced a deal with Volkswagen. My gut hunch is that this is a little bit of a Band-Aid on an open chest wound. It's a small band-aid on an open chest wound. It'll give Rivian a little bit of extra cash to survive a little bit longer. I think $5 billion is involved, but $2 billion is going to a joint venture that may never be created, and the other $2 billion only happens if the joint venture is created. So Rivian is really getting $1 billion up front. I'm not even sure they're going to get that or how that's going to work out. And that gives Rivian a little bit more cushion to keep going, but they're bleeding so much cash so fast. I think they're going to need to do another capital raise. And maybe the Volkswagen deal gives them a little bit more respectability so that they can go to market and do a funding round and get some money from people who were dumb enough to believe that the Volkswagen deal matters. But Volkswagen had a deal with Fisker before. I think they had a deal with somebody else before. These companies announce these deals and then nothing ever materializes. So how does this actually work? Did I lower my cost basis? Technically, my cost basis doesn't really matter because the money's in an IRA. So the cost basis isn't really a significant factor. And it's a long story, but my cost basis a lot of my stock was, the cost basis was adjusted due to a family event. So that's a bizarre story, but so cost basis isn't really a relevant issue. Like I said, it was in an IRA, so the cost basis is irrelevant. Um, will humans live much longer due to tech? Different opinions on that right now. We'll see. I mean, will AI, extend our lives? I don't know. I will say this, and I probably should do a video about this. I have I really dove deep on fitness and nutrition, and I've really changed my life. And I've got like significant muscle mass. This is a 106, 67 kilograms of lean muscle mass on my body on a 97-kilogram body, and I'm losing a little bit of weight and doing cardio and strength training and eating a lot of protein, taking creatine monohydrate. There's a whole bunch of stuff I'm doing. So I think that I will live healthier longer. I may live longer, but I will live healthier longer. In particular, due to having more muscle mass. Muscle mass is super important. Cardio fitness is super important. Yeah, I sorry, another detail, just a personal issue. So I'm not living here in Thailand, but I'm effectively base of operations in Thailand. I'm a nomad and I live in Florida, but I'm spending a lot of time here in Bangkok and I am thinking about buying a Tesla. I'm thinking about buying an electric vehicle, probably in a couple months, leaning towards a Tesla Model Y. More ground clearance, more storage, more space, easier to sleep in, has a HEPA filter for the, polluted air that we have in Thailand. Um, would be road tripping around Thailand, possibly road tripping into Laos and Cambodia, maybe a couple other places. Um, and there'll be some videos that'll come from that. Thought about buying a Model 3 because the Model 3 is the new Model 3, has some advantages. I think the Model Y's advantages outweigh the Model 3's advantages, but I'm still undecided. And then there's a side thought, which PYGKLB mentions BYD. The BYD Atto 3 is less than half the price of a Model Y. And I'm like, all right, do I spend $56,000 on a Model Y with FSD? Or do I spend like less than $25,000 on a BYD Atto 3? It's a smaller SUV and there's disadvantages, but wow, half the price. Do I think Elon should focus on his health? I don't have an opinion on Elon and his health. That's not my problem. Um, So yeah, so there's a decent chance I'm going to buy a Tesla Model Y. Again, maybe a BYD Atto 3, maybe a Model 3 standard range would save a lot of money, be significantly less expensive. How much do I need the extra range? I'm not sure. Like a lot of the trips I'm going to take, it's probably not going to matter. And there's superchargers, enough superchargers and other charging options. I don't think it'll matter. Yeah, I've seen Zeekr. I don't think that. I think there's also Deepal or something. There's a bunch of EVs here in Thailand, but it's hard. It's gonna be hard to talk me out of a Model Y, to be honest. Like I just, in particular, like I think my girlfriend and I can sleep in the Model Y. We'll get the mattress. It's like $250 for the mattress in the back. And honestly, like hotels in Bangkok are great. There's certain cities that have good hotels, but there's some places you go in Thailand where the hotels are kind of just suck. The air conditioning doesn't really work. They don't have good air filtration. If you sleep in a Model Y, you've got great air filtration, great air conditioning. So that's a big thing. What do people misunderstand about spaced? I don't know what spaced is. SpaceX? People misunderstand a lot about space and SpaceX. I don't really have a good answer to that. Thomas Aquinas says Catalyst Energy, FSD licensing, 25K car, Robotaxi, Optimus. I don't really see most of those things being things that are going to move the stock. There's no 25K car coming. I believe we're going to see two vehicles that cost less than a Model 3 coming soon. Late this year, early next year. That may move things a little bit. Robotaxi is the big one. Robotaxi soon and Optimus not long after will be the big drivers of Tesla's value. Yes, Mark, I was talking specifically about the new mattress. I was definitely talking about that new mattress. I'm not sure if Elon packed on a few pounds. There's an interview with Everyday Astronaut, if people aren't sure what we're talking about. And there's a couple of angles of that interview that make Elon look heavy. It's not clear whether he's heavy or he's wearing a bulletproof vest, to be honest. That didn't look like natural fat. That looked more like he's wearing a vest. I really wish they would push EV adoption with a much lower priced car instead of waiting others to do it first. BYD is already doing very low priced cars. I mean, well, I really wish that governments would get out of the way and let BYD and other Chinese car companies sell electric vehicles in Europe and America. Stop interfering. Stop trying to impose tariffs. If they're safer and cleaner, and these guys, like, I think Joe Biden just said climate change is an existential threat. Well, climate change is an existential threat. Let the Chinese EVs in. What the hell are you doing? Um, Ben, did I answer your question? I don't know if I got your question right. Cybervan, yeah, we'll see. I think there's a few things coming. Will Tesla bot as a partner inhibit men and women from seeking partners? I don't think so. I think it's the same thing. Like, people don't watch robot competitions. We watch human competitions. We like humans. I don't think FSD is going to cross any kind of line like that. What about the surveillance hazard read Chinese cars? Look, is the existential threat climate change, or is the existential threat Chinese government? Like, make up your mind. Make up your mind. Biden said the existential threat, the only existential threat to humanity is climate change. I don't agree with that. I think the fertility crisis is an existential threat. I don't think China, if you like, I don't personally believe that climate change is an existential threat. But if you do believe that climate change is an existential threat, then let their EVs in. And what the hell is the surveillance hazard? What the hell does that mean? We have all kinds of Chinese products in America. Somehow a car having cameras is going to be a surveillance threat? I just think that's silly. Future Tesla vehicles will be 800 volt. I'm not sure they're all going to be 800 volt. I think Cybercab's going to be 400 volt. I'm not sure about that. Who would you most like to see interview Elon? Me. Obviously me. I want to interview Elon. I think most interviews with Elon suck. Everyday Astronaut is an exception. I think he's spectacular. But I think most interviews with Elon suck because they ask him the same questions we've already heard before. Tim Dodd finally got Elon to talk about the LEAT engine. That's the next engine for that's a topic I really love to talk about soon. Is what's the next engine after Raptor? Yeah, birth rate decline clearly a bigger threat, Mark. I agree with that, and I'm working on it. And by the way, on my X profile, I posted a job ad for a young engineer in Thailand to come work for me to help build the pod car. And I'm talking to my girlfriend about doing a post on something called JobsDB, which is like the big Thai job website, to see if I can get somebody to come work for me on that. Yes, Google wants to know when you go to Aldi. I want to know when you go to Aldi too. I'm watching a 75-inch Chinese surveillance threat right. Yeah, exactly. The TVs. There's so many surveillance threats. It's ridiculous. Will tech artificial births help solve the birth rate issue? I don't think so. I don't. It's not, I don't want to say it's impossible, but I think that's way down the road. I think the reality is what we need to do. Just my quick opinion on this is young people should be seeking partners early. When you turn 18, if not earlier, but at least when you turn 18, you should be thinking about who am I gonna. You shouldn't be dating for frivolity. You should be dating because you're trying to find somebody to marry and have children with. And if you start at 18, if you wait until you're 30 to do that, if your window is 18, I'm oversimplifying here, but if your window is 18 to 40, you got 22 years to find a partner. If you say, well, I'm not going to really worry about that till I'm 30, then you've just reduced, and this is men and women, you just reduced your window from 22 years to 10 years. You're dramatically reducing the probability of having kids. What will Elon's next comp package look like? I think I did a post about that. I probably should do a video about that. I think Elon next comp package would be start at $2 trillion market cap with some other qualifications. And he gets 1% of this ownership of the company for every $2 trillion after that, up to like 20 trillion. So that's potentially 11% of the company for making it a $20 trillion company. Will bots make better parents eventually? Maybe. College is time to find an equal, both in goals and intelligence. Yeah, college is a good time to do it. Law school. I found my first wife in law school. Um, but I was always I from the age of even high school, I was, looking for a partner. I wasn't looking for fun. I mean, I didn't mind the fun, but I was looking for someone long term. If there's no 25K car, what's the three hidden cars? The 25K car is the cybercab. There may be a human-driven version of the cybercab, but the cybercab is the 25K car that they talked about. And I don't think there is a 25K car anymore. There's a 20K car. $25,000 car isn't going to move the needle. We need a $20,000 car. Well, we need a self-driving car, and the robo taxis move the needle, and then the price of cars becomes irrelevant because they're not selling them to customers anymore. They're operating a fleet. Um, Young people need access to more wealth than they have today. How can they earn it? I don't think that's true. I think young people have all the access they need. Young people have way more than our grandparents had. You go three generations back. Did they have more wealth? No. What is the stage for FSD in China? I think that they're testing FSD in China. I don't think they've gone farther. I mean, I'm thinking about buying a Model Y here in Thailand, where you can buy FSD, but it doesn't work, and paying $6,000 for FSD because I think if they're going to have FSD in China soon, then it'll hit Thailand not that long after. My car will be free. You won't own it. Exactly. Would you live on Mars once established? I probably would not because I have children on Earth. And if you go to Mars, it's a minimum, right now, it's a minimum 30-month trip. It takes 6 months to get there. You can't leave for 18 months, takes 6 months to get back. So it's a 30-month trip. So not seeing my kids for 30 months is kind of bad. And even like communication has a minimum like 8-minute round trip lag and up to 40 minutes round trip lag. So that's kind of far to be away from my children. Will the Delaware judge double down on her previous ruling? Great question. I do think that the Delaware judge has already decided to disregard the shareholder vote. She announced that the hearing on attorney's fee will go ahead on July 8th, and then they will schedule they'll do a future schedule on addressing the shareholder vote. Self-driving solar-powered car, open pilot Aptera. Aptera is dead. Aptera is never going anywhere. They make great videos. They don't even make great videos, to be honest. They're dead. How much longer do you think S and X will continue in production given the capability of the new 3? I've been saying for a while that I think Model S and Model X should be discontinued. I don't think they should replace the Model S. I think they should do a new Model X that is basically a larger Model Y. Make it 2 inches wider and 6 inches longer and give it a legit third row and get rid of the Falcon Wing doors and make it for under $60,000. And you'll sell 250,000 a year, if not 500,000 a year, versus between S and X, you're around 50,000 a year now. Thanks, Mark Plot. Good luck with everything. I hope you feel better. If the judge doubles down, will Elon not get his package? If the judge doubles down, my expectation is as long as Texas goes ahead, then they will just do the package. They will just do another vote with Tesla as a Texas corporation. It'll get approved then. Should we email the judge? I don't even know if she has an email. I don't think messaging the judge makes a difference. I think the judge made up her mind, and I could be wrong, but I mean her finding of like Robin Denholm not being independent was absurd. Her finding of Ira Ehrenpreis and what's the guy's name, Murdoch, not being independent, I think was wrong. But with Robin Denholm, it was just absurd. It's like, well, Robin Denholm became extravagantly wealthy based on Tesla stock. Yeah, after the shareholder compensation package in 2018, not before. Aptera is doing their best to hide their drivetrain change from the reservation holders. Sandy ratted them out last August. I did not see that Sandy ratted them out. Have you gotten much response from your hiring post for Robotaxi project? No, I did reach out to, you used LinkedIn and tried to network with some people, and I talked to 4 different people, and none of them, I think 2 of them didn't respond, and one of them had a job and couldn't leave, and the other one was too far away. So we keep working on it. Can Tesla avoid the lawyer's fees who brought the initial suit? That's going to be decided soon. I think the judge is going to stick them with it, and then Tesla will appeal. But the appeal will take too long, and I think, like I said, I think Tesla will redo the vote in Texas. Yeah, and I do think this is going to be devastating for Delaware. Delaware? Anybody think about forming a corporation? We want to form a corporation in Delaware. Delaware? No, you don't want to do Delaware. So, all right. Well, I just want to keep this one short then. I want to thank everybody for watching. I think this has been great. Just be aware that we may see the shackles of NHTSA, the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration, be lifted from Tesla and free FSD to go forward. Will I come back to Florida? I'm expecting to come back to the US probably late this year for a few weeks. Hopefully, get a Cybertruck, drive around the country. If anybody's interested in this, if anyone's interested in going in with me on my Cybertruck, I have an early order. I expect to get a all-wheel drive Cybertruck. And if somebody wants to partner with me, and the deal is basically this: we buy the vehicle together, and I drive it around. You let me drive it around for a few weeks on a road trip with my girlfriend, and then I hand it over to you into your car, and you pay for it. And what you're getting is you're getting to move up in the line, and my name stays in the title because of Tesla's rules about not being able to sell the vehicle. So that's something I'm thinking about doing. And you just have to put up with Warren taking your vehicle on a road trip, and I'll be careful and I won't wreck it. So, um, yeah, the judge isn't gonna. Is that Mark Malone? Is that my Mark Malone, or is that a different Mark Malone? I see a Mark Malone. Is this my old friend Mark Malone, or is this somebody else? Hey, Mark. You. Love you, man. Mark Malone, for those who don't know, has been a friend of mine for, I don't think it's 50 years, but it's close to 50 years. It's more than 40. I'm only 58, so we've known each other since like middle school, maybe. Great guy. Thank you, Mark. Thank you for watching, Mark. I hope you're doing well. All right, I'm going to wrap this up, and I want to thank everybody for watching. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye, everybody. And watch the SpaceX launch. Thanks, Mark.